The coffee pot slipped from my grasp, shattering against the diner's worn linoleum as my uncle's voice boomed across the morning rush. "You're stealing from your own family." Every head snapped toward us, forks frozen midway to mouths, conversations dying instantly. "Giving away free food like you own the place. Your mother would be ashamed." My skin burned as 30 pairs of eyes bore into me. Behind the service window, my cousin Amanda smirked, phone already recording. In the far corner booth, the small figure in the yellow jacket seemed to fold in on herself, shoulders hunching protectively over the egg sandwich I'd just delivered. Time slowed as Uncle Richard's finger jabbed toward me, then toward the little girl. "You think because your mother left you her share that you can run this place into the ground? That ends today. My name is Natalie, I'm 29 and co-owner of a family diner. This is the story of how I reclaimed my mother's legacy from the very people who swore to protect it. For 8 months since Mom's death, I'd honored her wishes by continuing to work at Sunrise Diner, the restaurant she'd built from nothing alongside her brother Richard. Mom's will had shocked everyone, leaving me her 51% ownership stake despite my minimal involvement in the business while I'd been away at culinary school. She always believed in you, the lawyer had explained as Richard's face darkened. She wanted you to have the chance to make this place your own. Uncle Richard had smiled tightly that day, one arm around my shoulder. "We are still family," he'd assured me. "We'll run it together, just like your mom would have wanted." But together had quickly become Richard overriding my every suggestion, scheduling me for the punishing early morning shifts and scrutinizing every receipt. I'd noticed discrepancies in the books, inventory that didn't match sales, deposits smaller than our busy days would suggest, but each time I raised concerns, Richard dismissed them as my inexperience. 2 weeks ago, I'd noticed her for the first time, a girl no older than 10 slipping through the door precisely at 7 a.m., before the school rush. Her yellow jacket hung loose on her small frame, backpack clutched against her chest. Without making eye contact, she'd slide into the farthest booth and wait, barely visible above the table. "Egg sandwich please," she'd whisper, voice so soft I had to lean in to hear. When time came to pay, she'd count out crumpled bills and coins, always coming up short by nearly $2. I covered the difference from my tips and added a glass of milk. "Growing bones need calcium," I'd say with a wink. She never responded, but ate every bite, eyes constantly darting to the door. The pattern continued for 2 weeks. 7 a.m. yellow jacket. Quiet order. My discreet help. She never spoke beyond her order, never smiled, never made eye contact. Until today, when Richard had decided to make an example of me. "I asked you a question, Natalie," Richard demanded, his voice cutting through my frozen shock. "Are you stealing from this family or just stupid?" "She's just a child," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "I can't let her go to school hungry." "Not your problem," Richard snapped. "No more freebies or I'll start proceedings to have you declared incompetent to manage your share." The little girl abandoned her sandwich, scrambling to gather her backpack. Before I could reach her, she was out the door, a flash of yellow disappearing down the street. "My office." "Now," Richard ordered. I followed him through the kitchen and down the hallway to the small room at the back of the diner. His cramped back office still held photos of him and Mom from the diner's opening day 25 years ago, their smiling faces a stark contrast to the tension now filling the room. A buyout agreement lay on his cluttered desk. "Your mother was sentimental, letting you inherit when you've never shown interest in this place," he said coldly. "I'm offering you a one-time deal, $50,000 for your shares. Take it and walk away before you run this place into the ground." I stared at the paper, noticing the actual value was far below market rate for a profitable restaurant. Mom had told me the diner cleared nearly $300,000 in profit last year. My share would be worth 5 times what he was offering. "I'd need to think about it," I said carefully. Richard's face hardened. "Don't take too long. This offer expires in 48 hours. That night I couldn't sleep. The apartment above the diner, once Mom's, now mine, felt suffocating. Why was Richard so desperate to push me out? The question nagged until I found myself downstairs at 2 a.m., using Mom's old keys to open the office. I pulled up the accounting software on Richard's computer, comparing it to the handwritten ledger Mom had always maintained in parallel. The discrepancies were immediately obvious, and far worse than I'd suspected. For 3 years, Richard had been systematically siphoning profits, underreporting income while falsifying expenses. The total missing, nearly $400,000. My hands trembled as I photographed the evidence with my phone. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. While Mom was struggling with her illness, her own brother had been stealing from her. As dawn approached, I formulated a plan. I wouldn't confront Richard yet. I needed leverage beyond just the financial records. I needed allies. Around 6:30 a.m., I headed back upstairs to freshen up before starting the morning shift. At 7 a.m., I watched the door, but the yellow jacket didn't appear. By 7:30, worry gnawed at my stomach. Had Richard's public humiliation scared her away? At 8:15, the diner's atmosphere shifted dramatically as a gleaming black SUV with tinted windows pulled up directly in front. Two men in suits emerged first, scanning the area before opening the rear door. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped out, his presence commanding attention without effort. The breakfast crowd fell silent. Forks paused midway to mouths. Richard emerged from the back office, eyes widening as he hurried forward, smoothing his rumpled shirt. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Sunrise Diner. How can I help you?" His voice had transformed into something obsequious I'd never heard before. The man's sharp, intelligent eyes swept across the diner, ignoring Richard completely. "I'm looking for the person who's been helping my daughter," he stated, his deep voice revealing nothing about his intentions. I froze by the coffee station, pitcher in hand. "My daughter," the man repeated calmly. 10 years old, yellow jacket. "She's been coming here for breakfast." I set down the coffee pitcher and stepped forward. "That's me," I said quietly. "I've been serving her." The man turned, studying my face for a long moment before his expression shifted from scrutiny to something softer. "She hasn't eaten breakfast outside our home since her mother died," he said. "Until 2 weeks ago, when her therapist suggested trying small steps toward normalcy. You're the first person she's spoken a complete sentence to in 3 years." The diner remained absolutely silent. Even the kitchen sounds had ceased. "I didn't know," I whispered. The man approached, extending his hand. "James Porter." Several gasps rippled through the diner. Even I recognized the name James Porter, tech investor and philanthropist whose development projects had revitalized several struggling neighborhoods. "My daughter is Olivia," he continued. "After her mother's accident, she developed selective mutism. Therapists, specialists, medications, nothing helped. Then yesterday, she handed her tutor a note about a kind waitress." He reached into his jacket and produced a folded paper. I recognized the childlike handwriting immediately. "You're the only one who talks to me without being scared. I like the milk." "Thank you, oh." "This is the first time she's reached out to anyone," James said, his composure cracking slightly. "I had to find out who you were." Richard stepped forward, his demeanor completely transformed. "Mr. Porter, I can assure you our establishment always welcomes your daughter. In fact, I personally instructed my niece to take special care of her." James's gaze hardened as he turned to Richard. "Really?" "Because my security team reviewed your establishment yesterday afternoon. We have cameras monitoring Olivia for her safety, and they overheard quite a different story." Richard paled visibly. Behind him, Amanda had stopped filming and was slowly backing toward the kitchen. "Where is Olivia today?" I asked, concern overriding my awe. "At home with a cold," James answered. "She was upset about missing her breakfast here." He turned back to Richard, his tone measured but firm. "I don't need your apologies. What I need is to speak with," he glanced at my name tag, "Natalie. Privately." Richard hesitated, clearly unwilling to leave us alone, but a look from James sent him reluctantly back to the kitchen. Once alone, I took a deep breath. "Mr. Porter, before you say anything else, I need to show you something." I pulled out my phone, showing him the evidence I'd gathered overnight. "This diner belonged to my mother. She died 8 months ago, leaving me majority ownership. My uncle has been embezzling funds for years, even while she was ill with cancer." James studied the figures, his business acumen evident in his quick assessment. "And you're showing me this because?" "Because I believe in karma," I said simply. "I helped your daughter without knowing who she was. Now maybe you can help me save my mother's legacy." James considered me for a long moment. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership," I said. "Investment to buy out my uncle completely, modernize the diner, and expand our community initiatives." In return, you'd get a profitable business and a safe place where Olivia feels comfortable. 2 days later, Richard arrived to find James Porter and his lawyers waiting in the office. I sat behind Mom's desk, a position I'd never taken before. "What's going on?" Richard demanded, his confidence faltering. "I'm declining your generous buyout offer," I said calmly. "Instead, I'm offering to buy your 49% share for fair market value." Richard's face flushed. "This isn't how family treats family. Isn't it?" I slid the accounting records across the desk. "Is this how you treated your sister while she was fighting for her life? Stealing from her?" "You don't understand business," he sputtered. "Those are legitimate operational costs." "Fraud," James interrupted. "The word you're looking for is fraud. My team has already spoken with your former accountant, who's very eager to cooperate rather than face accessory charges." Richard's eyes darted between us, calculating his options and finding none. "You think you can run this place without me? You'll fail within a month." I stood slowly. Mom believed in me enough to leave me her life's work. That's all the confidence I need. "Your options are simple," James explained, his tone almost sympathetic. "Accept the fair buyout, sign the non-disclosure agreement, and walk away. Or refuse, and we'll pursue full legal remedies, including criminal charges." 4 hours later, Richard signed the papers, his hand shaking with suppressed rage. As he stormed toward the door, he turned back one last time. "Your mother would be disappointed in you, turning against family like this." I met his gaze steadily. "No, Uncle Richard. She'd be heartbroken to see what you became. The difference is, I'm doing something about it." 3 months later, Sunrise Legacy Cafe opened in the same location but transformed. Modern equipment filled the kitchen, while the dining area featured warm lighting, comfortable seating, and a special corner designated for school children. A small sign on the wall read, "No child turned away. All students welcome." I had insisted on keeping prices affordable. The restaurant's business model included a suspended meal program where customers could prepay for food that would go to someone who couldn't afford it. Olivia came every morning before school, her yellow jacket now accompanied by a small apron embroidered with the cafe's logo. She didn't speak much, but she helped arrange napkins and wrote the daily specials in her improving handwriting. Sometimes James joined them, sitting quietly with his laptop while Olivia worked alongside me. Last week, I saw Richard through the cafe window, standing across the street, watching our busy morning service. Our eyes met briefly before he turned away. I felt not satisfaction in his downfall, but grief for what could have been if greed hadn't poisoned his heart. Olivia tugged at my apron, then pointed to a new customer who had just walked in, a young boy, maybe 12, with worn shoes and careful eyes. Without a word, she grabbed an egg sandwich and glass of milk from the counter and brought it to his table herself. As I watched her small act of kindness, I realized something profound. When someone betrays your trust, you can either become like them or become stronger in the broken places. Mom had built this diner as a place of welcome and warmth. In reclaiming it from betrayal, I hadn't just honored her legacy, I'd finally made it my own. The boy looked up at Olivia with surprise as she set down his breakfast. She didn't say a word, just gave him a tiny nod of understanding before returning to my side. Sometimes the quietest voices teach us the loudest lessons about courage, about resilience, and about how justice eventually finds its way back to us all, often through the most unexpected messengers.